All right, hello, and we are live today. Welcome back. Today is May 13th, Saturday, and we've got a great topic for you. Welcome back to the Philip Chen channel. Today we'll talk about 5 interview questions that you might get asked in what we'll call a typical marketing, sales. It's fairly general in the sense of any role really can be asked some of these questions, specifically if you are dealing with promotion, marketing campaigns. It could be something like a new product launch. But these questions generally come up inside of an interview. And what we'll do is we'll walk through each of the interviews, pause for a few seconds to give you a chance if you want to respond live to the question. And then we'll dig into at the end, hey, what is a learned interviewer looking to hear or understand from the question, and what you might expect back. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. Change over to scene 2. All right. Perfect. So 5 interview questions to be ready for. The first question that you might get is, walk me through what's not on your resume. So take a quick moment to gather your thoughts on how you'd want to answer this question. And one rule of thumb is, oftentimes, this comes up a bunch, but people will talk about politicians, or they'll talk about lobbyists, for example, and how they're always asked questions and they're always answering something different. Well, an interview isn't actually very different from that in some ways. Yes, you want to address what the person has asked you, but then really it's a golden opportunity with some context to be able to share what perhaps had been on your mind. There's a very interesting phenomenon that my good friend Scout Bartlett talked to me about, which is people usually remember what comes after something odd. So, for example, walk me through what's not on your resume. And I'll answer. Yeah, so what's not on my resume is the leap of faith that I had to take to leave a cush corporate job in the corporate world. People talk often about Google and their perks and the massages. This was a leap of faith to leave that lifestyle to go to a startup company. And there's 3 reasons why I did that. The first was grit. The second, ownership and accountability. And the last, creativity. So for example, inside of my role at PayPal, large corporate company, what I found was there was not a lot of ownership or accountability. Oftentimes, you might be given a task or you're one part of a full wheel. So, for example, on the acquisition team, I may only be running ad creative campaigns, designing an ad, designing some of the copy, putting that copy live, and then measuring the results, oftentimes getting 5% click-through rates. But at the end of the day, that is one tiny piece outside of the entire, call it, acquisition strategy. So in my role at Circle Up, one of the places, which was a smaller startup company, one of the places that I loved was that accountability ownership. Not only were ad performance on my plate, I was also in charge of looking every week at how many leads overall across all channels came in, and was directly responsible for working with my peers and my teammates to influence and increase that number, oftentimes in a 2-week basis or monthly basis. Here's a second question that you might be asked. Tell me about a successful or unsuccessful campaign. An answer for this question will then show, really, hey, talk about either successful and successful. Doesn't really matter what it is, but the important part is laying out first the pain or the challenge of the campaign. What was the campaign trying to influence? And what the interviewer is looking for is a simple way to understand a campaign, call it a framework. Oftentimes, interviewers themselves may not be the actual person running campaigns. They may only have a high level knowledge. And so if you can very clearly to even someone that has maybe never worked in sales or marketing or been in charge of a campaign, helping them understand the pain or the challenge, what it is that you did to address it, and then the results, that can stick in somebody's mind fairly simply and easily. And if you add a joke in at the end, even more power to you. That'll be more likely to be remembered. So tell me about a time, or tell me about a successful or unsuccessful campaign. Great, I've got quite a few different campaigns. And one that comes to mind right now is a go-to-market multi-channel campaign that I recently ran at InScribe. And this is what you might call a tier 1 campaign, which really means if there are different types of priorities, this is one of the bigger, more cross-functional, larger campaigns that was directly tied to an event as well as a product feature. So the main challenge of this was our product team had come up with a new feature that they wanted to bring out to market, go to market. The second piece was we recently had some very positive PR about raising Series B. The real question is, how do we leverage some of what's happening in the company to drive more awareness, more curiosity, and at the end of the day, more demand, which will then translate down to revenue a month, perhaps 2 months, depending on your sales cycle. In our case, a month or so, or even the directly influencing leads inbound the day of. The campaign itself was for, in many ways, how do we share that we've now up-leveled because of Series B? A larger brand story was one component. A second component was getting the message out there to different constituents, one of them being specifically net new customers, people that had never heard about us. The second, people that had been familiar with InScribe. And lastly, just some of the larger press in general that are the VCs or perhaps other folks inside the industry. And the reason for the campaign being successful was our multi-channel strategy. This campaign included not only a webinar, it also included PR placements, and it also included a drip email campaign nurture series that followed not only the webinar, but also to our 2,000 subscribers to our content. And the reason why this was successful was not only did the whole company get involved, posting and reposting on social media, we also got the VCs involved, but it was also very successful because it drove a 15% lift of traffic to our inscribe.ai website, but it also got some very newsworthy placements on TikTok, which was a very different channel that we never thought before, and we didn't pay a single dime for it. Another question you might hear are, hey, what resources are must-haves? And this is really to share, like, hey, have you done it before? What did you learn if perhaps at a different company? Or, hey, if you could have XYZ, all the resources in the world, how would that influence your leadership? How would that influence your results? And to answer this one real quick, the resources that I must have, I'll usually talk about in terms of teams. So there are 3 main components of resources that I must have for me to be successful and for the company to be successful. The first, I'll just kind of display them in terms of the roles and the responsibilities, but the first is a product manager. Product marketing manager, specifically for talking specifically marketing. The second is a marketing operations person or a data scientist in many ways. And the last is a content person to generate content and then find the place to disseminate or distribute that content. These resources are must-haves because, as I found in 2 different startup companies, if you don't have a simple, clear way of describing the product, you will not be able to empower your sales team to sell your product. You won't be able to help your potential customers quickly grasp if this is the right fit for them. And then thirdly, you won't be able to target via paid or owned channels if you don't speak to who that customer is. And that's what a product manager or even a product marketing manager is a must-have skill set. Secondly, without the marketing operations person, you're not going to be able to run campaigns. You won't have the data. You won't know what's working or what's not working. Perhaps there's an overlap with the CRM and sales. If they're not able to communicate to you, you can't get reports. You don't know how a call went. Without this, you will fail. That third content, are you talking awareness, investigation, consideration? What's going to grab someone's attention? How do you get that out there? Without any of that, you're bound to fail. Fourth, have you worked with sales before? Especially in a marketing role and even a sales, largely go to market. To bring a product to life, to create those sales, it's so important to have had experience working with sales. If you haven't had experience, you might talk about, in some ways, how you might work with them. This is very critical for many types of roles, and it's great to have an answer. And then what would you say previous peers say about you? This is mostly about a culture fit. This is how perhaps you see yourself, and in some ways, how others might see you. Oftentimes we answer this question with my strength, which is really a weakness, is what you'd say. However, in this case, just be real. This shows a cognizance of your own self, and you might share even a difficult time, a period where you had to work with somebody, and then a way that you overcame any challenges. So I might say something like, my previous peers would usually call me an optimist. When we didn't have resources available, an optimist is someone that would roll their sleeves up and take action on finding the right resources, or maybe taking action doing something themselves, or being able to reflect back and find interesting ways to make something happen. An optimist is someone that when they look at the data, yes, they're very clear. Yes, they're very realistic about what it's saying, but it also is not a blame game. They're not going to suddenly start blaming people. They're going to take the personal power to work together with their teammates in order to take action and start the change. A lot of different ways. So these are 5 different interview questions that you might get asked in an interview. And I'm very happy that we're able to go through this, and may you have some more fun interviewing for other roles as well. Welcome to the Philip Chen channel. For those out here for the first time, we talk about marketing tips and strategies, especially on growth, as well as now you'll see some broader context around culture, how to create teams, and how to work well with people. Take care. Happy Saturday.